Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people teach other people a lesson by doing exactly what they say, not necessarily what they want. And in this episode, OP's boss tells him that he's too stupid for a work promotion and fires him, only to beg him to come back. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your stories to this email right here. So this one is short and sweet. I went to the grocery store, and after buying all my stuff, I went back to the parking lot. As I was getting close to my car, another one parked right next to mine, and the guy just swings the door wide open, hitting my car. At that I scream, "Hey, you just hit my car!" Hearing me say that, the a-hole then just turns around and says, "Whatever, just hit my car and we're even, okay?" And the guy just walked away shaking his head at me. Now luckily, there was a security guard nearby, and I asked him if he witnessed what the guy said. The security guard just said, "Yep," and then he turned away. The guy knew what was coming. So with that, I pretty much gathered all my strength, and then kicked his door so hard with the bottom of my foot and left a huge dent across his driver's door. I then got into my car and left. I never had a citation, a ticket, or got contacted due to that. My goodness, be careful what you guys wish for, right? And I just want to say that I really hope that the car the idiot was driving was his own personal car, because it would be so terrible if he was driving someone else's car and returned it with a big dent in the side, all due to his crappy attitude and big mouth. So back when I used to work in a sandwich shop whose specialty was foot-long sandwiches, there was a small media storm about how our sandwiches weren't actually a foot long. Lots of people jumped on social media, showing a ruler next to their sandwich and tagging the company saying it's not a foot long. We got notified about it in the staff email, but they really didn't care for two reasons. One, it was dumb. Two, it was only the bread. The ingredients were the same regardless. And for anyone who hasn't worked for them, the meat is pre-portioned by weight or quantity of slices. Cheese is 4 slices, and the salad and sauce is unlimited. So if your bread was 11 or 12 inches long, you still got 4 slices of ham or 2 chicken patties or the obscene amount of lettuce. So one quiet afternoon, a Karen who bought a sandwich from us 15 minutes ago saunters back into our store. The woman stands her sandwich up on its end on the counter, holding it against a ruler. She then exclaims, "This isn't 12 inches. Does it look like 12 inches to you?" The woman had a smug look on her face that only a Karen could pull off. I jumped in to avoid my staff having to deal with this nightmare of a woman and attempted to politely explain the above points. How the meat and cheese are the same no matter the variances in bread sizes, and that everything else was virtually unlimited. And that's when Karen rudely interjects, holding her hand up in a stop sign saying, "I don't need you to make excuses. This sandwich is not the full foot, and I want it fixed. What are you gonna do about it?" I tell her, "Fine, no problems at all, ma'am." I then unwrap her sandwich to find 2 bites already taken out of it, and figured she just wanted to get a new sandwich out of us. But being the rude woman she was, I wasn't allowing that to happen. I went to the bread cabinet and pulled out a tray, and then started measuring each one until I found one that was almost 13 inches. I then whip out the bread on the counter and started cutting the bread like I would any other sandwich. Only, once I put the knife down, I promptly scooped up her sandwich and tipped all the contents on the new bread. It looked pretty haggard, to be fair. Karen was just standing there, mouth half agape, and she didn't say anything. I gleefully asked her if she would like me to add any extra sauce on her footlong, and she sighed so hard that I felt the wind off it, and she says, "Yeah, I guess." After I wrapped up the sandwich in fresh wrapping paper, I passed it to her saying, "This one is definitely 12 inches, with the same smug grin that she gave me. The Karen shuffled out the door, but later she called the store owner to complain, wanting me fired. The owner and I were on great terms, and he directly picked me to be the supervisor at the time, so after asking my side of the story, he practically told Karen to suck eggs. She didn't get anything out of us. The whole media situation was a nightmare for him, so he thanked me for handling it the way I did and not wasting any extra food. Oh man, guys, OP was way too nice to give Karen brand new bread. Like, I wish OP just cut an inch off of a new loaf, glued it onto Karen's existing sandwich with some mayo, and called it a day. That would have been the funniest thing ever. There you go, ma'am. Your sandwich is now the full 12 inches. Now get out of my store. I'm renting a little house out past the suburbs of the city that I'm currently working in. The house is a little old and the appliances are a bit dated, but it was much cheaper than a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, and I move around every couple of years for work. My landlord lives out of state and doesn't have anyone local, so for the past year and a half, I haven't talked to anyone. Just pay my rent on time and keep doing my thing. So 4 months ago, plumbing issues started popping up, and 2 major appliances decided to give up the ghost. I notified my landlord via email and written letter. After several follow-up emails and phone calls, a local handyman showed up to look at everything and provide a quote. After receiving the quote for parts plus labor, the landlord told me flat out that they won't be paying for the repairs. They said that since I'm an engineer, they'll allow me to purchase parts, install them, and then deduct the cost of the repairs from my rent payment. They said it was either this or learn to make do. I wasn't super thrilled at this response. I replied back to them saying that if they're willing to deduct my time and cost of the parts from my rent, that I would get started immediately, thank you very much. They were thrilled to hear it, and they asked me to send receipts for their records when everything's finished. And I'm thinking, great, now to put together all the pieces and get to work. The first step was to file for an LLC with my current state. Next, I set up some cameras and borrowed a GoPro from one of my hiking mates. I was able to document all the repair processes, from me watching the YouTube videos of how to do things, to me making multiple runs to the parts store to get a piece I didn't know I needed. And here's the kicker. At my day job, I make over $50 an hour. That's what my time is valued at. So the final bill for everything worked out to be 12% higher than the quoted cost, and the landlord is very upset. But my lawyer added to the email chain has kept them very civil. So yeah, a lot of people are saying that OP let the landlord off pretty easy with his $50 hourly rate, guys. Like, a lot of people are saying he should have charged a lot more to bump it up from 12% higher to 100 or 150% higher. So yeah, the landlord probably learned that it's much cheaper to hire a handyman next time instead of an engineer. When I was working at a small law firm as an intern, I was the go-to person for everything at the office. I was setting up computers, buying stationery, paying bills, going to court, seeing clients, etc., etc. So after being admitted as an attorney, I continued doing all of this because the secretary, who was a Karen, only did about 20% of what a secretary would usually do, and she refused to do anything else. Now, my boss at the time did some shady business, like he didn't pay taxes, so he couldn't just fire her for the fear of her ratting him out. The guy also never disciplined her. Another thing is, we're not located in the US. So since we worked from my boss's mother's house, the secretary also spent about 50% of her day just chatting to his mom, and they became fast friends. And guess who was always the evil one that everyone ganged up on? Yours truly. I was made out to be useless at my job, and I used to cry a lot and almost became an alcoholic from the work stress. So one day, the secretary got really upset with me after I asked her to buy some stationery since we didn't have staples. And after a heated argument, she told me that I'm not the office manager and I should stop acting as if I was the office manager. Now bear in mind, I was her senior, both as an attorney and in the number of years worked at the firm. My boss did nothing. He got upset with me and so did his mother. So I decide right there and then that I'm done doing both secretary work and my attorney work because I was working roughly 50 to 60 hours per week. The standard is 40. I was trying to get everything done without receiving overpay. Now she knew this and my boss knew this, but nobody cared that I was basically working myself into an early grave. So cue the malicious compliance. So if everyone agrees that I'm not the office manager, then I'll stop managing the flow of the office and only do my attorney work. I stopped paying the bills, buying the stationery, reminding my boss of important meetings, etc. Basically stopped doing everything that Karen was supposed to be doing. Within 2 weeks, the electricity was cut for 10 days because it wasn't paid, and my boss's elderly mother and the rest of his family had no electricity. We also couldn't work for those 10 days. Once the electricity went back on, the phone lines were cut because of non-payment. We again couldn't work. The mail piled up, there was no stationery, and we couldn't do service of court documents because our service providers cut us off. And this went on for weeks. I simply worked around the issues and sorted my life out. In the end, my boss and his mother begged me to do what I was supposed to do, but I refused. Since I was focusing more on my actual work, my fees increased and my pay increased as well. Shortly thereafter, I moved away from that office to our secondary office, and I worked alongside lovely colleagues who did all the work they got paid to do. And I've been at this office for the last 2 years. Guys, here's a great lesson. Unless you work at a place where your employer actually gives a crap about individual advancement and values their workers, Going above and beyond your own tasks often leads to being handed more work without the recognition or extra pay, and sometimes, guys, it enables other people to be bad at or not do their jobs completely, like the Karen in the situation. And if you thought that boss was bad, listen to this, guys. So a few years ago, I worked for a furniture store in the back store. My job consisted of unloading and loading trucks, assembling furniture, and placing it on the main floor of the store. After around 6 months there, my supervisor announced that he resigned, meaning his post was up for grabs. Now, I had all the technical requirements, so I applied, but they gave the job to another one of my colleagues who had more experience, which was totally reasonable. So after maybe 1 year, my then supervisor just stopped coming into work for no reason. He just decided that he had enough and just left. No 2-week notice or anything. So while the director tried to get to him, I took over the role of supervisor. I was the one with the most experience, which means that combined with my regular work, I was now the one telling people what to do, when to do it, doing the schedule, and all the paperwork for the shipment. 3 weeks later, my colleague was officially fired by my director. In those 3 weeks, I just kept doing the job of a supervisor, and I was doing it pretty well, so I thought the promotion would come to me. But my director did nothing. I then went to see him, explained what I'd been doing, and asked if I got the promotion, which he answered that I was not qualified. I wasn't smart enough to do this job. Basically, the guy tried to make me look like an idiot. After some thinking, I just decided that if I wasn't smart enough to do the job, then I shouldn't do it. So I went back to doing my regular job, and I started looking for something else. 4 to 5 days after I stopped filling in, my director comes to see me in the back of the store, asking why the F my job isn't being done. After all, without me to organize it, nothing was getting out of the store to be delivered to the client. I just reminded him of our previous meeting, and he told me, yeah, I remember that. What I meant is, you're not qualified to get the pay bonus for the job. You still have to do the job, you idiot. Now I have to admit, I still wonder how he thought that would work. Still a bit dumbfounded, I just told him that if I wasn't going to get paid to do it, I certainly wasn't going to do it. And considering we were already short-staffed with my old supervisor gone, that he should be a bit more polite to me. Now apparently, this was an unreasonable request, a total lack of respect to him, and it was worthy of firing me, so yeah, he fired me. And I still don't get how that would fix anything, but hey, he's the boss. So I packed everything and left, knowing that the back of the store, which needed 5 people to operate, was now down to 3, with the most experienced worker having a total of 4 months experience. It only took my boss 1 day to call me back, telling me that maybe he went overboard on that, and perhaps we can arrange something for the promotion. To which I replied that I would not be coming back since I had a few interviews lined up. I hung up while he was still cussing at me, and after a few months at my new job, I heard some surprising news. The store had closed down after the other 2 backstore employees resigned, and my boss ended up jobless. I gotta admit, it felt good to see my old boss finally get what he deserved. Yeah guys, I don't understand OP's boss's logic at all. Hey, you're not smart enough to get promoted to supervisor, but you still have to do every task that the supervisor does. And guys, my old boss is notorious for doing shady stuff like this. The guy would often hire people right out of school, pay them the bare minimum to do the work, like the exact same work that other people do at the shop, and then pull the exact same thing the supervisor pulled, saying, oh, you're not experienced enough to get a pay raise. And let me tell you this, guys, one time my boss did not give this poor 22-year-old kid a raise. Like, the guy was so smart, he was so hardworking, like the 22-year-old guy worked harder than everybody at the shop. And do you guys want to know the reason my boss gave him for not giving him a raise? So the kid comes out mad one day after his performance review, and he didn't get the raise he was promised. Like, surprise, surprise. My boss told him, oh, you're only 22 years old. You don't have a mortgage like these other guys out here. You don't have a family to feed. You don't have bills to pay, so you can afford to get paid less while doing the same work. And the guy was like, yeah, but I would like to have a mortgage. You don't think I want one? Like, guys, this poor kid was getting $7 less an hour than everybody else at the shop. And he did the exact same work, and sometimes even more. And guess what, guys? The guy quit the same day. He went for lunch, and he never came back. And my boss comes out to me and is like, hey, why didn't he come back to work? I wonder why. I worked at a grocery store for 4 years. At the time, I was 3 years into this job, and I was working part-time while going to school. I was working in the frozen department, which most people did not want to do. I had a coworker who we'll call Karen. She was full-time and older than me. The woman was awful, and everyone who knew her in the store hated her. Our manager and upper managers hated her as well, and they never wanted to deal with her. Each department had a minimum of 2 phones. One was a wired phone on our desk, and the other was a mobile phone with a clip. If our manager was in, he would have it. If not, the first person would grab it and they would pass it on when they left or took lunch. That was standard procedure until one day. I had held the phone as I was the first one in, and I'd been answering calls as they'd come in. Karen then comes in an hour after me, and she clocks in and then comes up to me saying, "OP, I need that phone." She was half yelling with her hand outstretched. I say to her, "Okay, do you need to make a call?" Wondering what she needed this early. Karen then tells me, "No, I'm supposed to have the phone." She then demands the phone with her hand still out, and I give it to her confused and say, okay, here. Why are you supposed to have it?" I was actually confused at the statement. Karen says, "I'm full-time and you're not. Full-timers are supposed to be the only ones who have phones." She then rolls her eyes at me and cue the malicious compliance. On the next shift, I come in and my manager's not in, and I don't even grab the phone. I leave it on the charger at the shared desk, and I get to work and start my morning duties. I continue to work and talk with people. About an hour and a half later, Karen comes in, and she's late. She demands to know where the phone is. I tell her it's on the desk, and she stomps off and grabs it. I continue to work for the next couple of hours, and at some point, the store manager comes over to me while I'm working in the aisle and says, "Hey, OP, is your manager working today?" I say to him, "Hey, no, he's not. It's Karen and I working today." The store manager then asked, "Okay, then who has the phone? I keep calling it." The guy asked me confused, as most of the times, the calls get answered quickly. I tell him, "Karen has it." He then asked me, "Oh, why don't you have it?" Fully knowing that when our manager is not here and I am, I have it as I can give solutions. I then say to him, "Karen told me that you said only full-time employees are allowed to carry the phones." The manager says, "That's true, you are full-time." I tell him I'm not full-time, I'm only part-time. He then asked me where Karen was because she wasn't in the aisle. I tell him she's supposed to be in the next aisle stocking items there. I then walk towards the back to grab ice. Now, I wasn't there when the store manager got to her, but she had left the phone on the table and she didn't hear it ringing multiple times. The store manager was so pissed and he basically ripped her a new one. He told her off for not answering the phone and told her that she shouldn't have the phone if she was gonna leave it lying around. 10 minutes after speaking with the store manager, he comes up to me again after I left the freezer. He gave me the phone and told me that I should probably keep it on me as Karen is useless. So this happened today at a club/membership warehouse retailer. The newly appointed floor manager, of course we'll call her Karen, who in between berating her staff and hissing at customers, was asking rather loudly, all items must be placed on top of the conveyor belt for easy, quick, and efficient checkout. She kept walking around, screaming it over and over again to the lines of people. That's when my son and I look at each other and we smiled. We then carefully place our 60-inch OLED 4K TV on top of the conveyor belt. We had to place the box in a vertical orientation in order for it to fit on the belt because it wasn't long enough. Now, we could tell from the smirk on her face that the checkout girl knew exactly what we were doing, as she pretended to not have noticed and continued helping the lady ahead of us. At that moment, the belt jerks forward, with its usual sudden start and stop motion. The box TV then makes a loud thud as it makes contact with the polished concrete floor. The floor manager and the store manager runs over asking what the heck happened. And that's when my maliciously compliant son speaks before I could. He says, Karen here instructed everybody to place all the items on top of the conveyor belt for easy, quick, and efficient checkout. I just didn't want her to yell at me again like she did earlier at the sports apparel section. Hearing that, Karen's beet red, with her forehead veins popping out and throbbing at this point. The lovely checkout gal interjects to the store manager and says, I'm sorry, I didn't notice the TV on the conveyor belt because I was helping an elderly customer ahead arrange her shopping cart. We only have ourselves to blame as we've been telling everybody all morning that all items must be on the belt. My son and I carry on with the checkout process after getting a replacement TV. On the way out, the receipt checker says, not all heroes wear capes. We needed someone to do something like this, as he winked at us. So reading this post, guys, a lot of people are not liking what OP and his son did, saying what they did was definitely an a-hole move. This person says, okay, yeah, if the lady was rude to you, then that's something you can address with management, but what you did was effing stupid and spiteful. You destroyed a $1,000 TV to be funny. It's childish and a stupid way to conduct yourself in the world. Grow up and set a better example for your son. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. And that brings us to another end of r/MaliciousCompliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, a smug Karen pretends to be the owner to harass OP. And it doesn't end well for her. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.